Hi there, I am Terese Bowors, and I am so excited today to have a conversation with Alexis Burnett about cannabis gardening. Alexis is a cannabis gardener, and he's got some information to share with us. So I'm just so pleased to have you here. Welcome, Alexis, and maybe just share a little bit about you, about your cannabis gardening experience, and when you grew your very first cannabis plant.
Sure. Thanks, Terese, for having me here. And I'm always happy to talk about cannabis and my experience growing this beautiful plant. Um, let's see, I grew up, my parents had a small organic garden and farm. So we were always growing things. My parents were not cannabis growers by any means, but we loved to grow all our own vegetables, and we had lots of fruit trees, and we had chickens and different things like that. So I definitely grew up working with plants in that way, growing a lot of our own food. And then I guess it was in my teenage years, really, when I grew my first cannabis plant. I think I was around 16-ish. So it was sometime in the early 90s. I think it was maybe 1992 or 3 when I grew my first cannabis plant. And back then, it was kind of just something to do as a kid that I really thought was, just something I really wanted to try and do. But I stuck with it, and even after all these years now, I'm in my 40s, and I've been growing ever since, really. So it started as sort of I guess in a way, a little bit of a rebellious thing to do as a teenager, but then I just developed a real love for it, and really it's followed me kind of through my whole adult life. So I've just really I feel almost indebted and very grateful for my relationship with the cannabis plant, because it's taught me so much over the years. And then, it wasn't too long after that I really started to view it as medicine as well. And that sort of changed, especially that changed sort of my view and my relationship of the plant, because I started to see how it was helping people, and how it had just so many ways that it could help people. And then I just really loved growing things, and the cannabis plant is such a beautiful plant to grow, and it expresses itself in so many different ways too. So that was kind of sort of my introduction to growing. And I had some older friends that sort of helped me and kind of guided and mentored me a little bit very beginning. And then I kind of just kept doing it all on my own, and it was definitely different times in the 90s compared to the 2022 I guess we're in now. And
Totally.
this is legal, and it's quite different, but it was definitely different times back then in the 90s and the 2000s, really, and the 2010s as well.
Yeah, totally. And what would you notice as like the three top benefits of growing your own? So it's changed, of course, now from being the rebellious, I'm going to grow this because I'm not allowed to. So now we can legally grow our four. So what would you say are the top three benefits of growing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now it's so much more widely accepted, and there's so many people that are that are coming to cannabis because they hear it could help them, or someone has told them it could help them. And a lot of people in an elder stage of life, or at least a later stage of life, kind of retirement age and up, I see a lot of people coming to cannabis because they've either tried a lot of different things that either didn't work, or maybe some pharmaceuticals had side effects, or whatever the reason is. There's so many different reasons. But I think one of the most important reasons, or something that always comes to mind, is just that you can have a consistent supply of medicine for the whole year.
Yeah.
And if you find a cultivar, or what some people would call a strain or a chemobar, basically just a plant type that works for you, then you can have that whole, like that amount of cannabis medicine that will last you for the whole year. And I think that's one of the most important things, or at least what comes to my mind quickly, is that because sometimes when people are purchasing cannabis on the legal market, or wherever they're getting their cannabis from, you can't always be guaranteed that you're going to have the same variety or the same cultivar for you throughout the whole year. And sometimes people get used to using a certain variety of cannabis because some are more uplifting and some are, say, more sedating, and not everyone is looking for one or the other. It's obviously more complex than that, but I think having a nice supply of cannabis for the whole year. Another reason for me, and that I like to share with people, is that you can be guaranteed, if you grew the cannabis yourself, you know what's in the cannabis, like you know how it was growing. You know, hopefully that it was grown without pesticides and grown organically, hopefully even regeneratively or using regenerative principles. And I say that just because that's how I grow and that's how I teach people to grow, because I think it's really important to have clean organic medicine, just like I feel with my food. You know, my preference is always to grow my own food or to try to buy it organically when I can, know that it's been grown organically. And to me, that's really important. It's that my medicine and the medicine of others that I care about, it's organic. And it wasn't grown using synthetic fertilizers, and it wasn't grown using pesticides or insecticides and things like that, because you know, the government has said it, and in many ways they're trying to protect the consumer, protect the medical patient. But just like our food, the government says it's fine to spray our food with a lot of different chemicals. Now, this is my view, and people obviously have different views. So it's really up to you how you feel about that. But there are, I think in Canada, Health Canada has maybe 17 or 18 different pesticides that can be sprayed on cannabis. And sometimes when you're smoking or inhaling cannabis through vaporization or smoking, who knows what the effects of some of those things may be. And then if you're taking it internally, then you're still potentially taking that in as well. So I think like having clean organic medicine, and then again, medicine that can last throughout the year, is two things. And the last one I think is just, you know, you can really connect with your medicine. There's something like about, you know, being a gardener or a grower, you know, like so many of us find sort of solace and relief and just healing being in the gardens around the plants. So I often like to say that the medicine that we grow and harvest ourselves is the best medicine, in a way. And for me, the healing journey isn't just about the plant, or it's not just about the medicine, or just about maybe the pill if you're choosing to take a pill. But there's so many aspects of healing that come. And to me, I find a lot of healing in nature. And I think just us being out, connecting with the earth, connecting with nature, connecting with our plants in our gardens, breathing the clean air, listening to the bird song, you know, maybe kicking shoes off and walking through the morning dew. Like there's science that it's coming out and studies that tell us all these things. You know, I sometimes joke you have to, you know, pay for a study to tell you that going outside in nature is good for your health. But, you know, it's kind of the day and age we live in. But, you know, that's a big thing for me, is just connecting with the plant all year. And I really think that increases almost the potency of the medicine, just because at least the way we view it and when we take it internally, you know, we can remember the way that plant grew all year. We can remember the color of the pistils, the way it expressed itself, all the different storms that it went through, you know, the thunderstorms that happened, all the different things that you noticed when you're out in the garden around your plants as well. So those would be three things that kind of come to my mind. You know, there's lots more. I guess, you know, a big thing is just saving money too, right? Not everyone has disposable incomes, or at least not everyone in my circles has disposable incomes. And for me, that's part of why I'm really want to teach and help people to learn to grow and make their own medicine, is because there's a lot of barriers for people, and finances being one of them. So when you buy cannabis, anywhere you buy it, it's fairly expensive. And when you grow it, it's really not, you know, and your time is just well spent as well. So like saving money, I think, is a big one for a lot of people. For some people, maybe it's not it's not a big deal, but I know a lot of us that can be really helpful. And it could also be the difference between, having medicine and not having medicine. If you simply can't afford it, then you can't afford it, right? And that's the case. If that's the case, then definitely growing your own is going to be a really good choice.
Totally. One of my favorite things walking through the garden. I was just in there the other day because the snow has melted enough so I can actually go in. And it's like a whole nother energy in there. I walk in there and I can feel the energy of what the plants have been, who has been there before. So really look forward to being out there again. And the mental health boost is incredible of being out in the garden with the plants and listening to them. I love to listen to them.
Yeah, me too, and the bird song, and like that's, mental health is something that is, we're talking about it more, thankfully, these days. And
Yeah.
There's so much to the healing process. I think we're sometimes just, we've kind of been indoctrinated into this belief of, we need a pill to take all our troubles away. And a lot of the times I think, a lot of it can stem from just, imbalances in our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health. So, I think anytime we can be out in nature, there's so many positive spin-offs, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say makes a successful cannabis gardener?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a few things. Like I think someone, to start, you just have to go for it. You just have to do it. Some of us are, there's that sort of saying, like, I have a green thumb, I have a black thumb. Some people definitely maybe have a natural touch, but don't let it hold you back. If you feel like, oh, I can't even keep my houseplants alive, like, don't let that be the reason not to grow. So like, I think just like let yourself off the hook and just go for it. So that's a good place to start. I think another thing though would be someone who just observes, like you can create time in your schedule for one, and you just watch your plants and you get to know them, because the plants, they do communicate with us in many ways. Like I really think they communicate with us through what I sometimes call the language of the heart. Now, for some people, that may be a bit of a stretch, but they could definitely communicate with us through their physical characteristics. Most people know what a drooping plant is in need of water. Yeah. Insect infestations, different things like that. But I think just like, really observing your plants. I think recording the information can be helpful. Now, not everyone is really into journaling and writing, but like I really am. And I think it's a great tool just to keep track of like things like, when did you plant your plants? Especially if you're a new gardener. So you can revert back to it the next year and say, okay, here's the dates that I planted, here's the dates that I harvested, here's when I first saw the seeds come up, here's when I transplanted into the garden. So definitely creating a logbook or a journal where you can record those things, because as much as we think we may remember, we probably won't remember those kind of dates. So I think like that's a really important thing. And then just learning, being open to learning. One of my teachers used to always say, nothing is a mistake provided that we learn from it. So like, maybe you don't have the success that you think you would have wanted or should have had, or maybe you compare yourself to the neighbor down the road, someone that's been growing. I think we're all sometimes guilty of comparing ourselves to others. But we need to just get the experience. So don't let, what you may perceive as a mistake hold you back. Just learn from it. So be, okay, what could I have done different here? How could I have changed this? In fact, like maybe you planted your plants under, I don't know, black walnut trees, and you didn't know that black walnuts release juglans, like the chemical in their roots that is allelopathic and sort of discourages the growth of other plants. Or maybe you planted in too dry of an area, or you gave your plants too much water, or not enough water. So just keeping notes and just trying to figure out where you may have been led astray, or maybe where you led yourself astray, so to speak. And then I think it is always good to have a mentor or someone that can help you as well. I think that makes a successful cannabis grower, or it can at least speed up the learning curve or shorten the learning curve, sort of, so to speak. So whether that's someone that maybe I don't know, in these days you could take a course on those things, like we do all of that, but maybe it's just getting a good book, like books can be our mentors, like having some kind of resource, someone you trust or a trusted resource that can help you along the way, especially when you're new to growing cannabis. I think that would be a big thing. And then just a connection and a love for the plant. I that will grow regardless. Like, sometimes I see people that are so proud of their tomato plants or their pepper plants when they first get into it, or anyone. So many people over the years, either grow their first cannabis or their first vegetables or their herbs, and they're generally telling people about them and they're excited, right? So like that connection, we all need things in life that kind of pick us up and get us excited. So those would be some things, just don't let anything hold you back. Learn from your mistakes, create some journals or a logbook that can help you sort of realize where you may have been able to do something different, having some good resources, a mentor. I think those will all lead to you being a successful cannabis gardener. And then they'll also compound on themselves and they'll give you experience, right? And there's no short way, really. Like we gain experience every year that we grow. And geez, I've made all kinds of mistakes over the years. Like that's why I designed our course, because like I just had to learn. And back in the day, you just couldn't, it was hard sometimes to find, it was something you just couldn't talk about. And I would there was only a few people I could ask. And then, eventually it was just like, okay, well, I got to just really learn. And there was a lot of different things, water and nutrients and space and frost. And like, there was a lot of things that I just learned over years that I sometimes don't realize I even know until I start either talking to people or people ask me questions or that, like those kind of things. And then I'm kind of like, oh, wow, I guess I've sort of have learned a few things over.
That's my favorite part in my journal, is going back and seeing all the things I've learned. So I try to keep a list of, I don't want to, record the mistakes, but it's like, these are the things I learned. Don't do this next year. And so I'm always looking at that list and remembering how I improve from year to year. So one of the other things too that I've found really, really helpful is as you've mentioned, courses and books and mentors. And I've had mentors myself as well. But why don't you tell us more about what you offer as far as courses and books and support for people who are wanting to start gardening?
Yeah, so I actually wrote a book called Homegrown Cannabis, which I'm quite proud of.
I have it. I do have
a lot of ways. Yeah, I did send you a
am
copy
loving
of
it. Yes, I'm really loving the format, and it's just so easy for reference or to read. Either way, I'm kind of doing both.
Great. Well, thanks, Terese. I appreciate your recommendation. And, I tried to kind of my publisher wanted me to gear it really towards beginners. And they even say it's a beginner book, I think, on the cover. I think it's more than a beginner book in a lot of ways, but I wanted to make it easily accessible to people that were new to growing. And I also wanted to focus on organic and regenerative principles and techniques, because that's not in all the books for sure. Like there's a few cannabis growing books out there that definitely go into those details, but a lot of them don't. So that was one thing. And then I wanted there to be more too for people that have some experience and are more intermediate level as well. So, I'm very happy with how it turned out. And I think back to when I'll try not to digress too much, but like when I first started growing, like there was only one or two books out there really, or at least that you could find. Like Mel Frank and Ed Rosenthal had books. Like we used to call them the Bible, like the Grow Bible. I forget the name of Marijuana Growers Guide or something. But we would travel to like a growing store, an hour or 2 hours away from where we lived, and you'd have to ask the guy behind the counter and he'd give it to you, and you just treated it like the holy grail, right? Like these things were dog-eared, and there was no internet back then either. So like there was no such thing as a Google search. And nowadays we have a lot of resources at our fingertips. So I think that's a good one for people that are interested in organic growing. You know, that's a good place to start. And there's definitely other books out there that people can find as well. When I started Organic Grow Canada in 2018, when cannabis was legalized, I started a growing course at that point, and it was pre-pandemic, but I kind of knew I wanted it to be online, just so that we could go through the growing season with everyone, because I was teaching, you know, 1 and 2 day growing workshops, and they were great and people loved them, but like it was kind of me talking about it, you know, and it wasn't it wasn't hands-on. Like I would bring some things in. Sometimes I would bring in a plant or two, or I'd bring in seeds, and I'd bring in a bit of soil, and I'd even bring in some lights and different things, but they were just props. Whereas our growing online Cannabis Home Growers course it's designed as a seed to harvest program. So we start in April, and everyone across the country, and even so we have quite a few Americans that'll join us sometimes, or each year we have. And people grow their plants at home, and then we meet every 2 weeks, and we can share photos and videos, and some people will even walk out around their gardens like I always do each week, and show people my plants. And I go into my greenhouse and I can just show them things that are happening like live at the time, you know, like here's, I saw some cannabis aphids, or like here's the ladybugs, and this is what, you know, the ladybugs mate, and then you have ladybug larvae, and then they help to eat the aphids, you know, and like here's what the larva looks like, because not everyone knows what that looks like. Or here's a plant that I know has been overwatered or underwatered, or it's suffering from nitrogen deficiency. So like I love that part of it. And then we also have video lessons. I think there's maybe 30 or 40 hours of video in the course, so it's quite a bit. I've been doing videos for a few years now, so we walk people through the step by step, everything from starting with how to find seeds and what cultivars to grow, to planting your seeds, transplanting, vegetative growth, you know, soil and nutrients, and on and on. So people can watch all those videos at any time and go through them at their own pace, and then they can meet up with us on Zoom and ask questions. And then we have a really nice home, like a community forming. So we have like a separate community page where people share files and resources, and they can post pictures of their plants and ask questions and those kind of things. So it's been really great, because we can, you know, I'm there and I'm involved all the time, and I can answer questions. And I've actually had some helpers the last couple of years, some old like students that started with us that'll come back and help, and they can share what they've learned. And then we're just, you know, in communication kind of all the time, and we're learning from each other, and we get to see people, you know, across the country. Like we've had people out in BC, Alberta there, and then on the whole other coast, or the East Coast anyways, we've had people in Nova Scotia and Quebec, and lots of folks in Ontario, because that's where I am. But we also had people down in Cape Cod and up New York, and there was someone in Oregon, and a lady in California, which I thought was interesting, because California is kind of like the mecca of cannabis growing. And but she loved the course, the lady that her and her husband. So that was great. So I really enjoy that, and I enjoy the long term. Like I enjoy working with people over time too. So we're there to kind of help and support people through the season. And so we generally start that in April. And as I said, it goes through to October. So we go right through the harvest time, and we show people how to harvest, when to know to harvest your plants, drying and curing. That's always a thing where a lot of people go kind of I don't want to say wrong, but maybe don't do it the best way. Yeah. They either dry their plants too slow or too quick. Generally, it's people dry them too quick, and then they get too crispy, and then the curing process doesn't work as well as it could, and whatnot. So, you know, it's not rocket science, but there is an art to it too, you know, and there is a science to it as well. And it's just something that you want to make sure you take care of your plants as best as you can through harvest season as well.
So yeah. So the start date then, so what's the start and end date of course coming up?
I believe this year in 2022, the first date is going to be April 18th. So about 3 weeks. And then I believe the last one is October 24th.
Okay.
Basically meet every 2 weeks through the growing season. So it works out to be about 14 live sessions. And those are generally 2 hours long too. And we record them. So if people can't make it, they can watch those recordings indefinitely, and they can send in questions beforehand. And some people will send me photos and questions, and then I just respond to those on the call, and then they can watch them later. Generally, our live sessions, like I start with a teaching piece. So I do sort of like a lecture, or I talk about something related to the growing season and where we are at in the growing season. And then we do a round of questions and sharing. And then I'll usually get out into my garden and walk around and show people things as well. So yeah, it's been great. And then we have a very similar program that is about making medicine from cannabis as well, because I'm a herbalist myself. So I teach people how to make salves and tinctures and all those things. And it flows in a very similar format. We generally run it sometime in the late fall after the harvest comes in, and then learn how to make things with
That's right.
cannabis.
That's important too. Yeah, if you've got all this plant material now, then you need to figure out what to do with it. So yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like an incredible course. And it sounds like you're going to get all the knowledge that you need for the whole growing season. And then next year you've got it. You've got everything that you need to get going. So
yeah, it is helpful. And you know what? I people just will have lifetime access basically, or as long as the info is on my website, which I intend to just keep it up there until I'm grayer and older. But so people will have access to it. So it's not really like there's no time limit per se. So people can come back each year. And I always tell people, you know, the next year, like when you're getting ready to plant your seeds, like just review that video in the course, you know, and check it out and that kind of thing. And then even with our online community, I'm just sort of letting people continue to access that too. So they'll have access to it, because I really want to just give back. And some people come back in a bit of a helper capacity as well. So we have a few different options for people, but yeah, it's definitely helpful to review the material each year. And lately I've been adding more and more to the course. It's been growing each year. It's beyond where I think it needs to be, but you know, it's just fun to keep making new videos and putting them in there. Like we teach make their own nutrients and plant teas, and you know, really how to do it economically and perhaps most importantly, regeneratively. So we're using the earth and the soil in a better way than we found it. And that's my goal sort of in life in general, is, you know, to leave a good trail or leave good tracks and make the world a healthier, you know, more wholesome place.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so important. So where can people find you? Where can they find the home grower cannabis garden course?
Yeah, I can send you a link, but you just have to go to organicgrowcanada.com. And across the top of the page, you'll see Home Growers Course, and you can click on there. And there's a couple videos on there. I think we did one sort of promo video for the course, and there's some with some there's one with old students, like video testimonials and some written testimonials. And there's all the information is there as well. You can find out what you need. And if people have questions, you can email us at any time at info@organicgrowcanada.com.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll make sure to get all those details, and then I have a discount code as well. So if anybody wants to sign up through our talk or through me, I have a link and a 10% off discount code too. So I'll make sure I list that below that. I'll share that as well. And yeah, so April 18th, that's coming up soon, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to learn more and deeper growing. Anything else that you want to share before we go?
Yeah, you know, if you're watching this video later, we will definitely take people in after the fact. I just wanted to start kind of earlier so that most people can start at relatively close to the same time. But there's always a few people that will join a little later. So if it's past April 18th, you're welcome to reach out, and I'm sure we could fit people in But yeah, I don't have too much to share in closing other than it's a beautiful plant to grow, so I encourage people to grow cannabis regardless of if you do it with us, or with someone else. Just get out there and have fun and grow this medicine. I think be aware that growing one plant may lead to wanting to grow more and more plants, like maybe more cannabis plants, but also just other things, because you may realize that your black thumb isn't as black as you thought. And it can be addictive, so you may find yourself growing all your food and medicine, but hey, that's kind of what
Good thing.
in the world, take the power back, or take your healing into your own hands, I like to say. So I encourage people to do it, and let's just all work together to kind of turn around the stigma and the stereotype on this plant, because for thousands and thousands of years it never existed, the stigma and the stereotype. And if you do your research into why cannabis was outlawed and criminalized in the first place, you'll realize that it had nothing to do with the plant or healing or anything. There was some unscrupulous sort of people and reasoning behind it that could be another conversation, but it was used for many years, and really at the turn of the century, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, it was one of the most used plants in North America. And I think a lot of people don't realize that cannabis was in every, quote unquote drugstore, dispensary, and it was used and prescribed for many different things. And a lot of the people that were using it and prescribing it, fought as hard as they could for it not to be criminalized back then, because it was an effective medicine, and at least now the science is showing us why exactly, and sometimes that's what people need in order to believe it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and legalization certainly helps with that, getting more research under our belts, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much for sharing about your experience with gardening and your gardening courses and what you offer. And I'll be sure to share the link so everybody can have a more deeper look at the gardening course, because I think it's going to be a really great way for people to get their hands in the dirt and get growing. So
Great.
yes,
Thanks,
thank you, Alexis. Yes. All right.